In the annals of criminal history, few names evoke as much fear and fascination as Ted Bundy. A charming and charismatic individual, Bundy's outward appearance masked a dark and sinister secret. Behind his charming facade lurked a serial killer responsible for the brutal murders of numerous young women in the 1970s. The Ted Bundy Tapes, chasing a serial killer's trail of terror, takes you on a gripping journey into the mind and actions of one of America's most notorious murderers. This video delves deep into the haunting crimes that left communities in shock and law enforcement agencies scrambling for answers. Bundy's modus operandi was chillingly calculated. He would often approach young women under the guise of needing help or offering assistance. Once he gained their trust, he would overpower and abduct them, unleashing his sadistic desires. His victims ranged in age, appearance, and background, making it difficult for law enforcement to establish a clear pattern. The documentary reveals the disturbing details of Bundy's crimes, shedding light on the gruesome nature of his actions. He would engage in acts of sexual assault, torture, and murder, leaving behind a trail of devastation and shattered lives. Bundy's ability to blend seamlessly into society allowed him to evade capture for an alarmingly long period of time. Bundy's preferred victims were young women, often college students or those who fit a particular physical profile that appealed to him. He would meticulously plan his attacks, scouting for vulnerable targets and using his charm and intelligence to gain their trust. Once he had gained their confidence, Bundy would overpower and abduct them, unleashing his sadistic desires. The level of violence and cruelty Bundy inflicted upon his victims is unimaginable. Sexual assault, torture, and murder were hallmarks of his depravity. He would often engage in necrophilia and perform gruesome acts on the lifeless bodies of his victims, further adding to the horror of his crimes. One of the most chilling aspects of Bundy's reign of terror was his ability to blend seamlessly into society. With his good looks, charisma, and intelligence, he presented himself as an educated and respectable individual. This facade allowed him to operate undetected for an alarmingly long period of time, as he moved from place to place, leaving behind a trail of devastation and shattered lives. Law enforcement agencies and investigators faced immense challenges in their pursuit of Bundy. His lack of a discernible pattern made it difficult to establish a clear connection between the murders, leaving investigators grasping for leads. Additionally, Bundy's ability to change his appearance and use different aliases further hindered efforts to track him down. However, through a combination of diligent police work, collaboration between different jurisdictions, and the use of emerging forensic techniques, the net began to close in on Bundy. Investigators gathered evidence, including eyewitness testimonies, survivor accounts, and physical traces linking him to the crime scenes. The turning point in the investigation came when Bundy was pulled over by a police officer in Utah. The officer, suspicious of his behavior, discovered burglary tools in Bundy's car and arrested him. This led to the subsequent search of his vehicle and apartment, where incriminating evidence, such as weapons, restraints, and photographs of his victims, was discovered. Bundy's arrest marked a major breakthrough, but it was only the beginning of the legal battle that followed. Throughout his trial, Bundy attempted to manipulate the proceedings, representing himself and using his charm and intelligence to manipulate the courtroom. He maintained his innocence despite overwhelming evidence against him, prolonging the pain and suffering for the victims' families. Ultimately, Bundy's true nature was exposed, and he was convicted and sentenced to death. His execution brought a sense of closure to the victims' families and the countless lives he had affected. The Ted Bundy Tapes sheds light on the gruesome details of Bundy's crimes, painting a vivid and horrifying picture of his reign of terror. Through interviews with survivors, investigators, and journalists, the documentary provides a chilling account of the darkness that resided within Bundy and the far-reaching impact of his actions. Prepare to confront the chilling reality of one of history's most notorious serial killers as the Ted Bundy Tapes takes you on a journey into the mind of a predator, exposing the disturbing truth Behind his trail of terror, the Ted Bundy Tapes delves deep into the twisted mind of Ted Bundy, unraveling the horrifying details of his crimes and the psychological motivations that drove him to commit such heinous acts. Through interviews with survivors who narrowly escaped his clutches, investigators who tirelessly pursued him, and journalists who covered the case, the documentary pieces together a chilling narrative of Bundy's reign of terror. Bundy's crimes were characterized by a calculated and methodical approach. He would often lure his victims into a false sense of security, using his charm and charisma to gain their trust. Once he had gained control over them, he would subject them to unimaginable torture and suffering. Victims were often sexually assaulted, strangled, and mutilated, their lives brutally cut short by Bundy's insatiable urge for power and control. What makes Bundy's crimes all the more disturbing is the fact that he appeared to be an ordinary, upstanding member of society. His good looks, intelligence, and charismatic personality allowed him to effortlessly blend in with his surroundings. He used this to his advantage, preying on unsuspecting victims and leaving authorities baffled as to the identity of the perpetrator. The documentary delves into the painstaking efforts of law enforcement agencies to piece together the evidence and connect the dots. Investigators meticulously combed through crime scenes, gathered forensic evidence, and conducted interviews in an attempt to identify Bundy and bring him to justice. But Bundy was a master of deception, often changing his appearance, using different aliases, and evading capture at every turn. As the body count continued to rise and the public grew increasingly fearful, a breakthrough finally came. Bundy was apprehended and brought to trial, where he continued to manipulate and play mind games with those around him. He represented himself in court, attempting to undermine the proceedings and maintain a facade of innocence. However, the overwhelming evidence against him, including eyewitness testimonies and physical evidence, ultimately sealed his fate. In the final act of justice, Ted Bundy was found guilty of his heinous crimes and sentenced to death. His reign of terror had come to an end, bringing a sense of closure to the victims' families and a collective sigh of relief to the public. The documentary captures the impact of this verdict, reflecting on the profound significance of holding a notorious serial killer accountable for his actions. While Bundy's crimes were marked by darkness and despair, the documentary aims to shed light on the resilience of survivors, the dedication of law enforcement, and the power of justice, prevailing in the face of evil. It serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is hope for justice and healing. The legacy of Ted Bundy continues to haunt the collective consciousness, reminding us of the depths of human depravity and the importance of remaining vigilant against those who would seek to harm others. The Ted Bundy Tapes stands as a testament to the pursuit of truth and justice, ensuring that the memory of Bundy's victims is preserved and their stories are never forgotten.